Good evening, Hall of Fame Dynasty members. It is I, your commissioner, Jonathan Butler, once again. I just want to start this one out. I'm sorry for the late broadcast. It's been a tough day. Not only have I been doing tens, but my mom is in hospice. Like you guys know, she did take a turn for the worse. I do have some time to do this. I feel, obviously, as commissioner, I do have a necessity to bring this to you guys. I know there's a lot been going on for myself, but I do want to get this out. It's a lot of fun. It helps me de-stress. So obviously tonight we'll be previewing the New York Yankees. Vic has done a hell of a job with his team. He's made a lot of moves this offseason, especially after missing out on the playoffs this last year. Came close to that number 6 seed, finished in, what would it be, eighth. He would have finished in 8th place. Let me see. Let me actually pull this up because I don't really remember where they finished. Let's see. So, yeah, they would have finished in 7th place had we had 10 teams, but actually 6th. Makes no sense. Had a lot of weird confusions because of everything else, but they did miss the playoffs. They were just behind my team in the Chicago White Sox, who finished 7th, so the Yankees would have been 8th. Vic is looking to definitely get competitive once again in baseball. He missed the playoffs in basketball, so I know this is definitely his sport for this year. He wants to get in, and that's made by a lot of moves that we'll obviously discuss and see what has exactly gone on. So this team has undergone a lot of transformation, even from September or August last year to now. So why don't we go into it and really show you how the New York Yankees break down? Because it's a hell of a team, and we're not used to the Yankees missing the playoffs in real life, but obviously fantasy is much more different. So let me pull up the screen here and get the show on the road. So it's a little bit different. I'm set up here at the hospice home. I am doing it from my tablet, so you guys will kind of see that it's a little bit different for me. I may stumble a little bit, but either way, the show must go on. So starting off, New York Yankees missed the playoffs. They wanted to get there. Unfortunately, just didn't work out for them. And Vic is definitely a competitor. He's a bulldog. He's always willing to get out there on the mound and do what he needs to. So let's break down what they have. Wow, that was really weird. I guess I clicked more than once. So let's move on. This is New York Yankees Stadium. Underwent a renovation, new stadium for them over the last few years. You can see here, beautiful looking stadium. Really short porch here in right field. So obviously that gets taken advantage of by some of the power hitters in real life. And one of the first power hitters that the New York Yankees have on their roster is Gary Sanchez. Obviously, real life New York Yankee, had a very down year in 2018. Didn't even hit above the Mendoza line as he hit for 186, 291, only below 700 OPS after being above 850 in 2017. Really down year. Injuries held him back. He was just striking out left and right. Definitely not the same guy a lot of people came to expect. He's a slugger. He's a catcher. He's going to break down. He does play in the DH role, but only 18 home runs in 89 games versus the 34 or 33 that he put up the year before. Terrible, terrible year. But obviously a bounce back candidate. One of the top dynasty catchers to own if he's able to stick at catcher. And it seems like the Yankees are definitely willing to keep him there, which is great for his fantasy value. He just needs to figure out what the hell went wrong in 2018, and he's definitely a bounce back candidate, and that's why Vic was able to buy into him at a pretty decent price from the Colorado Rockies last year. And I did own Sanchez in a league. I was able to make the championship with him, unfortunately, just with how bad he was. And he's a guy that you have to believe in. We've seen the power. We've seen the pretty decent average with him. And he brings a lot of value to a wasteland of catcher that we have yet to see really any good talent break out. So Gary Sanchez, first hitter up in this very, very dominant lineup of Vic's New York Yankees. And then moving on over to first base, we have Tyler White. Now, not the most well-known name, but a great sleeper going into this year. I mean, he had a breakout last year, ended up getting some playing time near the end of the year. And in the 66 games that he played, he batted .276, .354 with an .888 OPS. Kind of a similar stat line to what people expected out of Gary Sanchez, But Tyler White, playing on a good Houston Astros team, will have to battle for at-bats. That's about the biggest issue that I see with Tyler White. I mean, he was able to slug 12 home runs within 66 games, so 1 home run every 5 games, which is great rate. Not always possible to keep it up, but I really think he has a chance to do it, and he's only 28 years old. And especially batting on a good Houston Astros lineup, even if he bats 6th or 7th, it's still a very valuable spot because of how dominant that Houston Astros order is. The biggest concern with him will be playing time because the Astros do have Michael Brantley, and if they bring up Kyle Tucker, they may put Brantley at DH if Reddick is playing well, or they've got plenty of options for DH, which is basically going to be Tyler White's problem. They do have Yuli Gurriel, who they'll give playing time to, and if Tyler White slumps, that's where you're going to see the issues arise for him and lose the fantasy value. He's currently being drafted as it's a little bit too late now. His ADP is 246, so obviously not a very high value guy. There is some risk, but he's definitely a big sleeper going into this year. He's on almost every single sleeper list that you could find out there. So Tyler White is the first baseman for the New York Yankees. But moving over to second, this was a guy that they did acquire this offseason in Scooter Gennett. Now, Scooter Gennett had another wonderful year for the Cincinnati Reds. He was able to put up a slash line of 310, 357, and 490, while being one of the most valuable second basemen in the league with 23 home runs. And the fact that you have average and power out of him, he'll add in a stolen base or 2 every year, so he's non-zero speed. He's a guy that is great for second base, where it's a semi-deep position, but it's very top-heavy with Altuve and Gennett and Adalberto Mondesi and Whit Merrifield. There's some options in there. A lot more of them are speed, but then you have Scooter Gennett, who's able to produce, especially on a very good Reds team now with Puig and Kemp and the additions that they made. Gannett's in line to have a very good year, and a lot of people don't believe that he's going to keep up that power, though. He did see a slight drop-off from the year before, but he's kind of almost a Daniel Murphy revival of his career of showing, hey, I can be great in this league. Trust in me, I will get it done. And especially playing in Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, I really love the value that he has going into this year. I was sad to part with him, but I was glad to get whatever upgrade it was, and I totally forgot how the Yankees ended up getting him. I will have to reflect on that, but Gannett's a great second baseman in an okay landscape. Next, at shortstop, this is where one of the biggest holes for the New York Yankees roster is Marwin Gonzalez. Super utility guy, played for the Houston Astros last year, hit free agency, and really didn't stick anywhere in particular. He was able to bounce around, had a very down year. A lot of people thought he was going to be this fantasy stud, fantasy superstar, with the fact that he had first base, second base, shortstop, third base eligibility, and outfield. So you could play him damn near anywhere, especially in a league with ours where the rosters are so large. You had that playing time, which was great. Unfortunately, he did go to the Minnesota Twins, which are they're locked and loaded at middle infield with Jonathan Scope. You have Jorge Polanco, who can play at short or play at third. You have Marwin Gonzalez, who can play at third, short, outfield, second base, whatever. So he has the opportunities to play, but we don't know if he's going to have a very defined role with Minnesota just yet. And especially after last year, it's really hard to believe in him. Dropped by almost 60 points in average. The power definitely ticked way down. He only had 16 home runs in 145 games compared to 23 from the year before. He's not likely to hit in a very prime position of the order. He may bat 6th, 7th on a decent Twins offense that does have some holes. I don't know where exactly he bats just yet, but that flexibility that does come with Marwin Gonzalez does have value and does deserve to be rostered. He hopefully will get majority of the playing time for short for the New York Yankees. Now, here's another one that the Yankees actually traded for and took advantage of the market at the time, and that is third baseman Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant was a top 20 Dynasty pick going into last year. Unfortunately, he really didn't play that way, though. He only got 389 at bats last year because of shoulder issues. He actually got hit in the head in Coors, so missed a couple of games after that, but played more like himself, and then was shelved for about half the season due to the shoulder issue that he had. He was on and off. You could tell he had tinkered with his swing. He was trying to get through whatever issue he had in his shoulder. Reading off-season reports, there was scar tissue. There was a lot of pain when he would swing. So he went more to the two-handed swing, and he was able to play through it for a bit. But the Chris Bryant that a lot of people came to love in fantasy just wasn't there. He dropped down to a 272 average, under a 400 on base after having an MVP year the year before, and just wasn't that top 20 middle of the order guy that you needed. Only played 102 games. The power wasn't there, and the Cubs offense kind of broke. And I think part of that was due to the fact that you had Rizzo not playing like himself, Wilson Contreras not playing like himself, and obviously missing a healthy Chris Bryant. But if Chris Bryant is healthy and can prove again, he's going to be a great slugger that will play every single day pretty much for the New York Yankees here, and hopefully on a dominant Cubs offense that people are expecting. So that's the infield. You've got a lot of veteran talent. You've got a sleeper in Tyler White. Pretty good offense here in the infield. So why don't we move to the outfield, and we'll start with who I think will be the top player for the New York Yankees this year, not obviously in real life, but in fantasy for Vic, and that is Giancarlo Stanton, who once again had a down year. He struck out more than he ever has in a year, as his highest year for strikeouts was 170, which was back in 2014 for Miami. But last year, 211 strikeouts in 158 games. Stayed healthy, which is great. He's able to play that DH left field role, and the New York Yankees need him to be dominant. He's a power, drive in the runs, doubles off the wall, everything that you could expect, and they need him this year. After going from a 1,007 OPS in 2017, only an 852 OPS in 2018, he's a guy that usually sits above 900 because of the power, and especially in a stadium like New York Yankee Stadium, he has that ability to just flip his wrist and knock the ball out of the park 400 feet like it's nothing. Unfortunately, he didn't do that, struck out a bunch, and hopefully his adjustment to the AL will help him, having that year under his belt and knowing how to play the DH position without letting it affect him. So moving on to our second outfield, and we'll be patrolling center field, is outfielder Aaron Hicks, a guy that I truly believed in, that has the ability to be a 2020 type player, and he was able to do it for the most part in 2018 as he put up 27 home runs, 11 stolen bases, not as much speed as you'd want out of him and as much as he showed in 2017 in 88 games, but the power was definitely there. The average sunk, unfortunately, to his detriment, but power is power, and especially for New York, they want the sluggers. They want everyone going back to back to back to back. And if Aaron Hicks can be a part of that lineup and do that, that's great. However, his biggest issue is health. He showed he can play. He showed he can at least muster up 480 at-bats in 137 games, and that's what the Yankees need. He's going to be a great source of runs, pretty decent source of power, not too many stolen bases, but he could hit double digits once again, and getting 22 and 11 out of him will be a fantastic season. Unfortunately, as an outfield too, I think there needs to be a little bit more floor for him, as his health is an issue. Now, moving on to right field, who will patrol for them, we have Stephen Piscotty, very underrated, stuck in the Oakland A's uniform, unfortunately, with him being there, never going to be great of a top offense, and they're going to have inconsistent times because you have guys like Chapman and Olsen and Ramon Laureano. They're going to be inconsistent because of the youth, because of the fact that a lot of these guys are sluggers. But Stephen Piscotty is definitely underrated. He's likely to hit third or fourth for the Oakland A's, and he put up a pretty decent year last year. He's already got 1 home run this year. Obviously, with the early start to the year, we are not counting it. We'll stick to the 28th. But the 1 game he played, he looked great. And he finished the year last year, 267 average, 821 OPS with 27 home runs. I didn't even realize he had that many, but a very underrated sleeper type guy who's being drafted in the top 150 players, definitely getting the attention he deserves after having a pretty down year in 2017 where he just didn't live up to expectations. The move to Oakland helped him, it seemed, getting consistent playing time, not being a part of the St. Louis logjam. And I think he's got the ability to be who could end up being the outfield two, or the second outfielder for the New York Yankees over Aaron Hicks. But he's got some proving that he can stick to what he did in 2018 and also be consistent, because he was a very streaky player last year, and that's an issue for him. So that's the starting lineup for the New York Yankees. Why don't we move on to the bench and the extra hitters that we have for them this year? So starting at middle infield as of this moment is currently Nick Ahmed, a guy that I'm not huge on. Unfortunately, he's part of a bad Arizona Diamondbacks team, but he will get playing time. Really doesn't offer much in terms of speed, not a whole lot in terms of power. In 153 games last year, only 16 home runs, 5 stolen bases. So he's got the ability to hit for power. Unfortunately, it comes at the detriment of average and on base. Not a guy that's willing to work the count too much. He has a lot of swing and miss in his game, as he showed by the 109 strikeouts in the 153 games. Nothing really all of that detrimental to his game, but will not be a huge value if he's hitting 234 on a bad Arizona Diamondbacks team. So he's got the ability to hit in the middle of the order because of the talent that's lacking in Arizona, but I'm not a huge fan of Nick Ahmed. He did have the eligibility to bounce around between a few positions last year. Unfortunately, he only has shortstop and middle infield this year at this moment and is likely to keep that. Moving on to corner infielder, this is actually a big surprise because the New York Yankees are stocked at corner infield and third base, with obviously Chris Bryant starting at third. And then you have Rookie of the Year candidate in Miguel Andujar. And that was a great get for the New York Yankees. I don't remember if he drafted him or not, but a guy that was right up there with Shohei Ohtani, willing to put in the work to be Rookie of the Year, just came short because Shohei Ohtani, let's face it, he's a unicorn. He's a guy that is absolutely insane if he can stay healthy and could be an ace and a great batter all at once. But enough of that. I mean, Miguel Andujar had one hell of a rookie year. 27 home runs, 297 average with an 855 OPS, and definitely had the backing of the New York Yankees where people thought he might not. He definitely was faded by a lot of people. Nobody thought he was going to put up these types of numbers, especially after his he had a great showing in 2017 and 7 at-bats, but it's also a very small sample. But he carried that into 2018 and dominated and was a top 15 third baseman off the top of my head. I mean, playing on the New York Yankees, playing in that small stadium helps it. Definitely could hit 30 home runs this year, especially as he's only 24 years old. Still room to grow, and doesn't work the strike zone all that much, as he only had 25 walks on the season. And that's a little bit of a brutal hit to his value. He will have those issues. He will be streaky, but if teams are able to take advantage of the holes in his swing, he may see a big sophomore slump. However, you can't beat the value that he's at right now. The fact that he's shown room to grow, and he's only 24, hitting almost 30 home runs. He's a guy to look out for that could be very, very dangerous. Next, we have at the playing infield position, you have Johan Camargo. Now, Johan Camargo, had this been 2018, would be a great value for the infield spot, but kind of goes along with Marwin Gonzalez. If he's not able to get the playing time, he won't have much value in fantasy. Originally, he looked like he was going to be the everyday third baseman for the Atlanta Braves. Lost that spot after Josh Donaldson ended up being signed by Atlanta for a 1-year deal, trying to prove that they can do it, that he can come back healthy. Camargo definitely lost on playing time. Now, he will be the first guy up to take over that third base spot if Donaldson ends up getting hurt or playing. If he ends up going to first, say Freddie Freeman gets hurt, whatever it may be. Camargo may even start at short if Dansby Swanson ends up getting that leash pulled, which I expect because he's not able to hit fastballs. There's also a report saying Camargo will get some time in the outfield, which wouldn't be bad for his eligibility. But once again, there's a lot of issues with his playing time, and you'll just have to sit on him if you expect him to be of value. There's the rest of your infield. So let's move on to the outfield with Brandon Nimmo. Nimmo is a guy that it's another playing time risk because the Mets are actually pretty stocked at outfield with Conforto, Lagares, Nimmo. You have somebody else that I can't think of at this point, but Brandon Nimmo is a pretty underrated guy at this point. I mean, only hit 263 last year, but a 404 on base percentage. He knows how to work a walk. He struck out 140 times, but with 80 walks to match that, he may not be your Daniel Murphy 300 type power hitter, but he's able to put up home runs at a decent pace while giving you stolen bases. He could put up, if he were to get full playing time this year, I could see him hitting 20 home runs and stealing 10 bases on a 265 average. And as an outfield 4, when you're able to get those types of counting stats without completely killing your ratios, that is excellent. I mean, he's got the ability to slug. He's got the ability to remain of value with his on base. So if Nimmo can get the playing time, I really like him as a value this year. He's one of my favorite sleepers going into this year. And outfield 5 is a guy that I do not love, though, and that is Randal Grichuk. He's a guy, he was one of the streakiest players last year. In one of my other Dynasty leagues, I remember owning him, dropping him, owning him, and at some point it was frustrating but great because you saw the potential, you saw the power, and it wouldn't really convert much in terms of stolen bases, but you saw when he was on. He was driving the ball, putting up doubles, putting up home runs. And on a team that needed a power hitter to get that offense going, Grichuk was that guy, but unfortunately he couldn't. He was kind of like Miguel Andujar, where he's going to strike out, but he isn't going to walk. That the walk rate needs to be there, at least for me, to know that even if he's in a slump, he has the ability to get on base to provide some sort of value. Grichuk has yet to show that he can be an everyday guy and provide everything in terms of fantasy. As even in 124 games, he only had 424 at bats. He's yet to be able to reach that 500 at bat mark. And if he can't do that, you kind of get hurt in terms of playing time. Grichuk is a guy, though, cheap power, especially late in the draft and on the back end of your roster. Not a bad guy to own whatsoever if he can figure it out. Now, coming in at utility, we have 2 lesser-known guys in Yonder Alonso and Teoscar Hernandez. Neither guy will jump up off your radar. Neither of them is going to blow you away with anything special. Yonder Alonso will play for the Chicago White Sox this year. He'll be switching between first base and DH with Jose Abreu. Should get a pretty good close of like 500, 550 at-bats, even though he will be switching. That should allow him to stay healthy. Same with Jose Abreu. And the White Sox may not have the best offense, but with Eloy Jimenez definitely stepping up right away for opening day, that does hurt Yonder a little bit, as he will likely be pushed back to the 5th or 6th spot in the order, with Abreu and Eloy being that 3-4 combination. 5th, not a bad spot to be, still heart of the order. But Alonso is a ground ball type guy who just hasn't been able to figure out launch angle yet and tap into some probably unhidden power that we have yet to see. And then on the other side at utility 2 is Teoscar Hernandez, a very similar guy to Randal Grichuk of could be valuable, could be not, and a good power hitter for the Toronto Blue Jays. He was actually able to provide a decent amount of value last year, as he provided 5 stolen bases, 22 home runs, also a very streaky player for the Toronto Blue Jays. However, he has been absolutely lighting it up in spring training this year, as he's batted 405, 463, and 514 through 14 games. However, like we said with Grichuk, runs into playing time issues because you do have a lot of outfield talent for the Toronto Blue Jays. So if Hernandez can do it, maybe he's able to bite into that apple. Unfortunately for the Yankees, it does take away from Grichuk then, because most likely you're not going to have Grichuk and Teoscar in the outfield at the same time. So there's your starting lineup. Those are your main batters for the New York Yankees. Let's take a quick look at the bench before we get to the rotation. And coming in first on the bench is catcher Tucker Barnhart. Backup catcher, not so bad, especially considering that the Yankees have Gary Sanchez. Good to always have that second catcher if you feel you need to, especially with a guy like Sanchez who hasn't been able to stay fully healthy. Barnhart will be a good value of on base, some runs, some RBIs. He won't really kill you in too many spots except for OPS, but a good backup for sure. Then we have Rio Ruiz for Baltimore, who's likely to play third base for them this year, especially after the departure of Manny Machado. But he will likely start at third base because of Renato Nunez of the Baltimore Orioles being banged up with an arm issue. But I don't see him really providing much of value. Really, he's a career 189 average hitter in the MLB and about 169 at-bats. Obviously, only a very small sample, but he hasn't really even lit up spring training either, batting at 297. Not too bad, but not too great either. Decent bench bat to see what happens. Guy you can always drop. Then for the final bench spot, we have outfielder Clint Frazier, a guy that the New York Yankees traded for last year, part of that Yankee system that may end up taking over for Jacoby Ellsbury in left field at some point. Or no, not Ellsbury. Who is it? Left field. So you have Stanton, Judge, Hicks, and who is the other guy that I cannot think of right now? I don't remember, but you've got Clint Frazier, beautiful flowing red hair. He will get his chance likely at some point here in New York in 2019, but we don't know what exactly he'll be able to do. He's yet to really prove much in the MLB. And finally, we actually have Didi Gregorius, who will be starting the year on IR due to Tommy John surgery late last year. He has been able to throw 50 times from 90 feet, so it's a positive thing for the New York Yankees of real life and in fantasy. The only problem I have with Didi Gregorius, not only the issue of the arm, we don't know how it'll affect him. It didn't affect Gleyber Torres too much. However, he's a very pull-heavy hitter, and we saw him really slump in the second half last year. As you look at 2018, lit the world on fire in the first half, and pre-All-Star break batted .263 with 17 home runs. So on pace for about 34 home runs. Really kind of fell off at times in the second half. You look at July where I have that backwards. He actually slumped in May. Had a good year to end, good couple months to end the year, but we don't know how that Tommy John surgery is going to hurt him. If it'll help him, it's going to take some time to get used to. We likely won't see him until the All-Star break. So that's the offense. That is definitely the strength of the New York Yankees. This is their bread and butter. And they've got some good talent in the prospect pipeline that we'll discuss near the end of the show that will be able to complement some of these players and take some spots that are open. But let's get to what I believe is a little bit of a weakness, or at least a very top-heavy position for the New York Yankees in their rotation. There are some very fantastic names. However, if they sustain any injuries, which, God forbid, may happen, may not happen, this could be where this is the New York Yankees' downfall. So obviously we'll start with SP1, Chris Sale. You all know who he is. I don't have to talk about him. Fantastic, fantastic year last year for the Boston Red Sox. 17 quality starts. He had, how many wins here? 12 wins, 4 losses, but a sparkling ERA. Only 158 innings, the first time he hasn't thrown 200 innings in a year in the past 4, but a guy that you can count to go onto the mound every single time that he gets the ball every 5 days. However, he's got to stay healthy. He definitely proved that he wasn't going to let September and October kill him. He was one of the best pitchers in August and September, and the few starts that he made, he was able to be dominant. And I think the Red Sox are looking to make a repeat, and they need him healthy. They may hold him back near the end of the year, which hurts the Yankees' value, but it is what it is. Next, we have another fantasy ace in Justin Verlander for the Houston Astros, a guy that I'm still amazed is doing what he's doing. Seems better than ever. He was able to cross the 200 strikeout threshold once again last year as he piled up 290 strikeouts in only 214 innings. Absolutely dominant. You know Justin Verlander by now. If you don't, I don't know where the hell you've been. Moving on, SP3, Luis Severino, a guy that the New York Yankees traded for, was originally drafted by the White Sox, flipped in a deal with Josh Hader to the Atlanta Braves. And after that deal, Luis Severino seemed to lose all of his value as he was absolutely trash, started getting lit up, and just wasn't the same dominant fantasy ace that everyone came to expect out of him. So the Yankees bought stock in him and were able to bring him in as an SP3. Even if he performs at an SP3 level, you're going to lose some value, but he's still very young. Unfortunately, he looks like he'll be starting the year on the injured list with a rotator cuff issue. He likely will not pitch until May 1st, which does kind of bring up an issue of depth, like I said before, with the New York Yankees, because they need all of their aces to be there. Next, at SP4, we kind of start dropping down a tier here as we get to Masahiro Tanaka, who's projected for a 3.81 ERA. As an SP4, that's fantastic. If that was a real-life fourth in-line rotation starter for any team, you're doing a pretty darn good job. So Masahiro Tanaka, let's take a quick look at him before we get too far in. Really good year last year, was able to finally figure out whatever issues he had. And he was able to drop down after a pretty brutal year in 2017 where night games seemed to really affect him. He was able to really level out as he actually performed decently in night games and day games. He actually had a slightly lower rate in night games for strikeouts, but his ERA did remain below 4, which is what killed him originally the previous year. I like Tanaka as a fourth starting pitcher. However, he's got to stay healthy once again. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt running the base paths, and that's why we need the DH as a universal position. That's just for you, Sean. Coming in at SP5, the fifth starting pitcher for this New York Yankees squad is definitely where we drop down once again. We leave the strikeout artist tier and get down to the ground ball pitcher in Dallas Keuchel, who is yet to sign with anyone. And he hasn't been particularly close either. And this is going to really hurt the New York Yankees if he hasn't signed within the next week. Apparently, the lefty's valuation of himself as a Cy Young definitely differs from the way front offices have looked at him. And his fastball only sitting in the high 80s, he showed that he is not as valuable as he believes. 1 second. All right, so obviously he's not as valuable as many believe. Relying on the ground ball has shown that it actually kind of hurts, and especially as a sinker ball pitcher, a lot of guys have learned to hit that low stuff. It's going to be pretty brutal for him. So if he can find a team, he may still not pitch until May. So he needs that to get going. He needs to get healthy. He needs to sign and earn some money, especially for the New York Yankees to have any terms of value on him. And now this is where we get to the really shallow side of the New York Yankees, and we'll just kind of breeze right through this. We have relief pitcher Brandon Morrow, who's starting the year on the injured list as well. And you have relief pitcher Max Fried. Morrow, constantly hurt already. He's thrown a 20-pitch bullpen session on Monday, but he's yet to show that he won't play game action until May, most likely. And then you have Max Fried, who's just as big of a question mark because we don't know where he's going to start. We don't know if he's going to be the fifth starter in the rotation for the Braves. We don't know if he's going to be a relief pitcher. 25 years old. He isn't considered to be a long relief type guy. They want him to be a starter. Unfortunately, you have Mike Soroka. You have Touki Toussaint. You have plenty of pitchers in the Braves starting rotation that could take his spot. and he may even start the year at AAA. So that kind of hurts the bullpen of the New York Yankees here. We'll breeze through these next three pitchers as we have Zach Godley, Tyler Skaggs, and Andrew Heaney. Andrew Heaney, love the talent, love what he can do. He is part of that constantly banged up Angels rotation that is not able to stay healthy. He's going to open the year on the injured list as well. He's going to have some issues there. If he can stay healthy, he could provide just around a 4 ERA, pretty decent strikeout rate. But once again, health has been an issue, not just for the New York Yankees of fantasy, but the Los Angeles Angels in real life. He's got a lot of issues. If he can do it, it's the same thing with Tyler Skaggs. Lots of talent, great strikeout ability, but has to stay healthy. And Skaggs looked like he was going to be a dominant force last year up until he got hurt. And because he had an ERA under 3, that ballooned as soon as he got hurt and went back out on the mound. So we don't know what Heaney or Skaggs can be because they can't stay healthy. And then finally, we have Zach Godley coming in at their second pitcher, who I loved going into last year. Drafted him myself, ended up moving him to somebody, or I think I actually dropped him, and just wasn't the same guy. Now he's got a worse team around him in Arizona, a worse defense, and a lot of issues. He was another guy similar to Keuchel that with the lower pitches was getting killed on it, wasn't able to locate the pitch like he was the year before, as he had 81 walks in 178 innings compared to 53 in 155 the year before. The control was lost. He was getting pushed around, and if he wasn't getting hit, he was walking people left and right. One of the worst pitchers last year. Good bounce back candidate, but that's what the Yankees are relying on. They're relying on health, and they're relying on bounce back with a lot of these guys. Unfortunately, it's not a great formula for success, but because of that, they do have a fairly deep staff of bench pitchers here as we look at Domingo Germán, Carlos Rodon, and Felix Hernandez. The one that really sticks out here for me is Carlos Rodon. Could be a fantasy second SP2, definitely has that potential. He's shown times where he's dominant, and he's shown times where he cannot locate a damn pitch to save his life. He needs to be able to do that if he expects to. He's getting up there. He's 26 years old. This is do or die time. As for Domingo Germán, he's a guy. He is a fireballer with control issues. He may not get as many starts as he'd like, although with Luis Severino starting the year on the injured list, Germán is definitely expected to be in that rotation to start. And Sabathia will miss a brief period as well. So Germán has a chance to prove himself. He just couldn't do it last year. As he started 14 games, only 5 of them being quality, but his ERA wasn't what you expected it to be. I mean, you look at what he did last year, and he put up, I can never find the ERA on here for some reason. I keep going right past it. There we go, 5.22, similar to his, 5.57, nothing like the 14 innings he showed in 2017, so he needs it. And as for King Felix, I think the King is dead. He doesn't have the ability that he once used to. Now, I'll quickly breeze through these last few as we have Matt Harvey, who's on the Angels, Tyler Anderson, Mike Fiers, and Matthew Boyd. The one that sticks out here for me is Matthew Boyd. He showed a lot last year, a lot of wherewithal after not starting out his career the way he would have liked. He was able to drop his ERA down to a 4.39 mark with a pretty decent strikeout rate, almost 9 Ks per 9, a good back end of the rotation starter. And the unfortunate part for him is he's on a rebuilding and terrible Tigers team. And the other name that sticks out is Mike Fiers, who should be able to have a fire year, but we don't know if he's able to sustain what he did. Good control pitcher, decent strikeout ability, but playing in Oakland should help him with some decent defense behind him, especially with Gold Glover Matt Chapman. However, we don't know if he's real or not, and I don't believe in his revolution that he had last year. He may be valuable, but not anything very high end. So finally, onto the 2019 prospect watch for the New York Yankees. Their AAA team is the Rail Riders. AA team is the Trenton Thunder. And so to start out the year, we've got a guy that I really like, and especially in a very shallow first baseman, the first base position has been very shallow going into this year. But a guy that could really change that, especially for the New York Yankees, who have Tyler White at first base and have some issues in their infield when it comes to depth, is Nate Lau. So his name does look like Lowe, but his name Lau, Brandon Lowe of the Rays. I may have it mixed up. Either way, good first baseman, may make his debut this year. They do have him playing 284 at-bats, 90 games played. So should make his debut right around the All-Star break. It would be fun to see him at a very underrated Rays team. Could join guys like Yandy Diaz. You've got Avisail Garcia out there now. He should be up and is a very power-heavy hitter. Could be good this year. We'll see if he can actually make some noise for the New York Yankees of our Dynasty League. Next, we have Dustin Fowler, who is minor league eligible right now. Even though he has passed the amount of at-bats, he is eligible because he was optioned to AAA earlier today. Unfortunately, Oakland has a pretty crowded outfield right now. He should make his debut, but he will be the first guy up in case of injury. Unfortunately, Dustin Fowler hasn't really proven anything. After that injury that he sustained in 2017, without even getting an at-bat, he just hasn't looked the same. Maybe now that he's had a year to recoup and try and rebound from it, he could be of some value, especially with his high-end speed that he produces. Next, we have two pitchers. One is Minnesota Twins' Chase DeYoung, who was originally brought over from Seattle. Nothing too fancy about him. Maybe a September call-up for him. That's about it. Nothing fancy to look for here. And then you have Jonathan Loaizaga, who looked really good in 2018, really liked what he was able to produce. Unfortunately, he did get hurt. Yeah, they were hoping to have him throw over 100 innings. He was unable to stay really healthy last year and produced pretty decently with a decent strikeout rate for a while, but then really got lit up. Unfortunately, just wasn't the guy that everyone expected. And I didn't mean to do that just yet. All right, we'll blow right through this, but I mean, nothing really special coming up in terms of pitching for the Yankees. Once again, this team is built on offense, scoring runs, driving in runs, power, and that is the Yankees. Vic and his Yankees are built the same way that the real-life Yankees are, of all power, as much power as you can get. So moving on with the final part here, the division finish. The Yankees are unfortunately in a very tough division with not only myself, where I'm looking to compete. You also have the Atlanta Braves, and you have the Minnesota Twins, who I really like what they've done this offseason, and we'll kind of get into that later down the road. I think they can be fantastic. And because of where they're at, because of the injuries they've already sustained to Luis Severino and Tyler Scott or Andrew Heaney and some more on that list, I really don't like the depth of what the Yankees have in terms of pitching, and I think that's going to hurt them week in and week out. So I've got them finishing at 4th in the division. That being said, I think they'll finish close to where they did last year. They did make some improvements, but they are relying on a lot of bounce-back candidates in Gary Sanchez, Chris Bryant, Giancarlo Stanton. You need Luis Severino to bounce back. There's a very high ceiling on this team. But because of the health issues and playing time issues, I think that the Yankees finish at 7th in the league this year, just outside that final wild card spot. And it'll be interesting to see what they can do. Obviously, the Yankees are very stacked in other sports, and Vic can make some moves there if he really wants to, especially with Baker Mayfield as the future of his fantasy quarterback for NFL. He's got Tom Brady, who could be fairly valuable to him and be moved. You've got some guys in basketball that can be moved if he really feels he can contend this year. It'll be fun to see what the Yankees can do, and it's been a blast looking at it. So it is what it is. I'm ready for the season to start. I'm going to keep trying to push these previews out. I know there's a lot going on with me that I really haven't told you guys, but my mom's taken a turn for the worse. Like I said, I'm currently here at hospice. I appreciate everything you guys have said and done. It really helps. Just doing this preview has been able to take me out for a little bit and de-stress. So thank you guys. Thank you for everything. I will keep in touch with everyone if anything else changes, but thank you for all your support. Thank you for making it a very, very fun fantasy league. You guys have been awesome. And I can't say it enough that thank you for everything. And it just helps at this time. So keep an eye on those fantasy hockey. It's been a blast. I really haven't checked the score in the last few hours because I'm really nervous about it. So I will talk to you guys later. The next team that is up in preview is my Chicago White Sox. I'm working on that show as we speak. So after that, it'll be the second half of the league, which was actually a lot of the playoff teams. Rest of them are playoff teams from here on out. So I'm going to try and get those out. Even if they lead into the season a little bit more, it should be okay. So if you guys have anything, if you guys want to do one, let me know. If you guys want to join me, I'd love to do that. So have a good night and keep those fantasy rosters rolling, boys.